Oh boy, I am going to be turning 60 soon, which is kind of hard to believe. So a few thoughts have come up about work and careers and your life in general. And we discussed a few of these topics during our live community meeting last week. I don't know if you were there. Many of the folks on the Zoom were Gen X and elder millennials. So the big question they came up with was, now what? I'm Larry Cornett, and this is Invincible Career. I will share a few links to some of the things I'm going to discuss in the online version of this and the newsletter that goes out. So you can go to newsletter.invinciblecareer.com to get those links. But yeah, wow, 60. Time flies, folks. Time flies. It seems like just yesterday I was starting my tech career, and I was in my late 20s, and I swear it does. It feels like yesterday that I was working at IBM. I'd moved out to Silicon Valley and started doing a internship at IBM. Fell in love with the Bay Area, fell in love with California. I mean, it's an amazing, beautiful place, and the energy of the industry at the time, the excitement, all the stuff that we were doing. The internet was kind of just starting, so it wasn't the internet that you're probably familiar with if you're younger. It was basically being able to send email. I think even at the time I was at IBM, there weren't websites yet, but there were like news sources, so you could get news, and so we would download news. My office mate, who was on the other side, would print out all the tech news and business news, and we would read it. Complete nerds. But that was just beginning. CD-ROMs were just starting. So there were kind of for the first time CD-ROM games, and it was super exciting because even for a few years after that, most software was still being delivered on floppy disk, and you didn't download software. You couldn't do auto installs. And so, yeah, if you wanted to get software, if you wanted to install a new OS or OS updates, you had to do it over floppy disk and then CDs and things like that. So kind of a interesting time. And now look at what's happening. Interesting tech backlash that's happening right now. And you can't really blame people. Whole lot of anger at Sony. People have lost access to games that they were told, hey, you were just renting this game when you spent $50 for it. You didn't buy it. You don't own the physical media. It's tied to your account. So you don't own it. You can't sell it. You can't transfer it. A ton of people have lost access to movies that they rented and purchased. I think purchased is the big issue, where they thought they owned the movies and then the rights were rescinded, I think, from the platform. I think this happened with Amazon Prime, if I remember right. And yeah, we don't own anything anymore. People willingly gave it up for the ease of use. Happened with Kindle. A lot of people discovered you don't own those books. You're leasing them. They're only available through Kindle, and if we decide that book's not available anymore, it disappears out of your library. So a funny thing is happening with younger people, and I think even some of us that are Gen X, quite a bit older, we're returning to physical media. People are buying CD-ROMs. There's kind of a retro boombox that just came out from, I think it was Iowa. So it has CD, it has cassette, you can record music. And it looks like a boombox. It's kind of cool. I think it can also play MP3s and stuff like that, but it is very retro. People are buying records again and getting good old-fashioned LPs and restocking their movie catalog because we're kind of tired of it. We're tired of what's happening with tech, where we don't own anything, and we have a printer where if we don't buy the right ink, our printer locks up. And now I saw people with their new BMWs getting an ad forced onto their screen for the Spider-Man movie. I think we're all sick of it. And I've seen this, I've been doing this and involved with the tech industry and stuff since 93. So I've seen a lot of it come and go, and I've seen the changes, and some's been interesting and useful, and some's been pretty bad, to be honest. Not so great. So a lot of thoughts as I'm hitting 60, and I stepped away from my corporate career in 2010, never went back. I briefly considered returning. It was the summer, and I think I did a couple of calls. I don't think I even did any in-person interviews. I talked with some recruiters and some hiring managers, and I may have had one meeting on campus. I remember I think it was with YouTube and a few other companies. And then the more I got into it, the more I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I had started consulting already, which can be quite lucrative, obviously. And I'd already had a taste of my freedom way back in the .com kind of boom time when I think I've talked about this. The startup that I was at had been acquired. They fired all of us, took our IP, and I decided to spin up a design consulting business at the time. And that was lucrative. And I got a taste of that freedom and flexibility and the power dynamic changes when you're not an employee, which is something I loved. So I knew what it was like, and I went back into that and said, yeah, maybe I just don't go back. I've never really enjoyed having a boss. I know that's not the case with everyone, but I'm a different kind of personality. I don't like it. There's been a few bosses that I really thought were amazing, that I learned from and respected, and I thought they were great leaders and great coaches and mentors, but most bosses are just kind of average, and some are terrible. Some are really toxic, and so I just don't like having a boss. I like working for myself, and so I've done it ever since. I kind of created my own exit blueprint. If you've heard me talk about the exit blueprint, that's a cohort course that I've developed to help people plan their exit from the corporate world. To figure out how can they step away from the 9-to-5 and go into self-employment, semi-retirement, and enjoy life earlier than full-blown retirement, waiting for that date, 65, 70, forget that. I did this at 50 is when I became completely kind of semi-retired and really got to enjoy life. And so a lot of the people on the call, like I said, there was a bunch of Gen X people like myself and millennials, mostly I think elder millennials, right? And so everybody's like kind of reeling from the chaos of what's happening in the industry. We have a broader set of conditions that are making people feel unstable and nervous. A lot of political stuff that's going on, obviously in the U.S., but it's also happening in other countries. A lot of disruption and worry. War that's happening, which is terrifying and horrible. Economic issues. A lot of economic stuff that's happening due to a lot of the decisions made by the administration. So there's inflation, and there's the tariffs we're dealing with, and all kinds of stuff. It's been really chaotic for people. And then, of course, what's happening in the industry. So I'd say the impact of AI is real, obviously. Huge impact on the tech industry, but now it's rippling into every industry and profession, right? Everybody's getting touched by this because it's been forced into every aspect of every tool, app, and service we use. Lawyers are dealing with it. Doctors are dealing with it. Accountants are dealing with it. Obviously, tech designers are facing it. Engineers are dealing with it. Nobody is immune to it. It's affecting artists and authors and music artists. Huge change. So a lot of people are like, now what? What do I do? I was on the path, had my career kind of figured out, the usual onward and upward. So I'm trying to get promoted, get a raise, find a better job. and keep marching ahead, putting money into retirement until the day I can walk away, enjoy my retired years. But now a lot of people have been laid off. Lots of layoffs in the industry, ripple effects in other industries. Some of the CEOs are saying, yes, this is due to AI. One CEO said, no, it's not due to AI. It's because it's changing the way we work with AI. It's like, so it is because of AI. You'd make a good politician. The quote efficiencies, right? You don't need as much headcount, supposedly. And then there have been a ton of layoffs, and then they've rehired people because they found out it's not working. Ford Motor Company had to rehire a bunch of people because they found out that the AI was not doing a good enough job with quality control. Starbucks rolled out AI ordering and inventory management, I think. And after about 10 months, they had to roll it back. It just was not working. And a lot of people are encountering these AI menu systems. You go through a drive-through, and it's an AI voice that's asking you, what is your order? And a lot of people are showing how you can circumvent that and get a human to come online. So it's everywhere. It's affecting everybody. And so the usual path has changed. It's changed. And if you're at this age, you're too young to retire. They keep pushing retirement age in the U.S., for example. I think now you can't officially pull out of Social Security, if that even exists anymore, who knows, until 62. They're recommending that you don't retire until 65. Now there's government officials saying, hey, don't do that. Keep working until you're 70. You know, maybe we won't let you have your Medicare if you don't keep working. We'll force you back to work. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. So you're too young to retire, and many of us don't want to retire. We don't feel like it. But we're getting too old to be easily hired. And that's something, if you're a little bit older, you've probably already experienced. If you're younger, you're thinking it's not going to affect you. I have some bad news. It will. Some industries earlier than others, obviously. We talked about that. So tech is an industry that's very youth-oriented. The entertainment industry, sports, professional sports, you can't be playing football at 60. It's not going to happen. And so what people discover is those interviews that used to flow in easily and all that inbound interest from recruiters and hiring managers slows down. If it was daily or multiple times a week, now it's once a week, maybe it's a couple times a month. Slows down. So it's getting a lot harder to get a new job. And there's a lot of reasons that they say they won't hire you that they're careful about so they don't get sued for age discrimination. But, cost, seniority, it's all kind of code for being an older employee. You're more expensive. You're probably more senior. So they've been flattening organizations, getting rid of a lot of management. So they're keeping the executives at the top. Maybe they're keeping the first level supervisors, but they're flattening the rest and getting rid of middle management. And then putting all the pressure on those poor entry-level managers. So it's not so good. But it's also affecting the other side. So there's, quote, age discrimination against the very young. Entry-level roles are disappearing. And that's been documented. There's research to support it. It's totally happening. So a whole lot of people who went to college and said, this is the path to getting a good job. I'm going to learn how to be an engineer. I'm going to learn whatever, programming. I'm going to become a designer, maybe product management, marketing, sales, whatever. And now they're graduating and there's no entry-level jobs. Because what's happening behind the scenes, and I know people, I talk with people, so I hear the truth of it. Somebody who's fairly senior that's using AI tools can now do the work of 10 junior people. You're essentially a manager of agents, of AI agents. So with agentic AI, a lot of people are using a variety of AI agents to do design requirements, writing the documents and specifications, coding, obviously. There's a whole lot of people using AI agents to code, QA testing, you name it, right? It's super fast, super easy, not always easy to get great results. There is work that has to be done to write the right prompts and test and evaluate and continue to tweak and refine it. But essentially you're a manager now. I know somebody who's no longer writing code. They just manage a handful of agents who do all the coding, and then they evaluate the output and they tweak it. But they don't really write a lot of code by hand themselves anymore. So that's changed. So those entry-level jobs are gone now. They're replaced by a senior person who's using agents. And so what are these kids going to do? I recently shared that a lot of really young folks, I think Gen and Alpha, they're looking at blue-collar jobs. They're looking at becoming electricians and plumbers and going into construction and various other types of jobs that seem immune to AI, but they're not, unfortunately. Yeah, even those jobs are going to be impacted because we've got the intersection of robotics and AI, and that's coming fast. The advances are happening more quickly now. There are all kinds of different robotic form factors that are being used for typical service jobs, construction jobs. Obviously, there's been robotic stuff in the manufacturing for a long time. I think Amazon replaced a ton of workers with robotic stuff in their warehouse that moves packages around and loads and unloads pallets of stuff. Obviously, the automotive industry, robotics replaced a ton of people's jobs. So a lot of that's done with robotic assembly and welding and all that stuff, right? So it's coming. And it's probably coming faster than we think, where one person managing a fleet of AI-fueled robots can do construction work and can do all kinds of work that typically would be blue collar. So I don't even think that's safe. I think that's going to change in the next 5 years because the rate of change is incredible. So again, what do you do? What I'm seeing is that people, especially the Gen X and millennial folks that did get into management, so they become senior managers, directors, maybe a first line VP, so they're not an SVP or an EVP. They're being asked to be player coaches. And that's happening a lot. A lot of my friends, a lot of my clients have said, I'm a player coach now. So I have a small team, maybe 5, not 20 like I used to, or 50 or 100. And I am very hands-on. So they're using AI to help them do requirements gathering and writing specifications and, the PRDs and all the kind of stuff that people do. Hands-on to do coding using agents and then managing maybe a few engineers. So yeah, you got to be a player coach. Very few roles that they've had in the past are pure management roles now, pure leadership, unless you're very senior, right? So the people who can adopt AI and adapt to this change, they're finding jobs. They're still finding it hard to get jobs. It's not easy. I know one person has been looking for over 2 years. Another person 6 months. I mean, it's taking a lot longer to find a decent job. It's just not the way it used to be. And when they do, they have to be a player coach. They got to be willing to roll up their sleeves and code again, design again, write PRDs again, but obviously using AI. You've got to know how to use AI. Kind of hard to avoid if you work in tech. Probably hard to avoid if you work in almost any industry, right? There's a lot of augmented work being done with AI as a partner, even for stuff like radiology and accounting and you name it, real estate. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So the advice that I was giving people, and I think this applies even if you're younger. This isn't really just advice for Gen X or millennials, right? I normally have not told people to play the numbers game. I don't think it's the best way to find the best job, but when the market is like this and it's becoming a lot harder to move quickly on your own without the tools, you can use AI to play a numbers game for the job search process, right? One is instead of trying to manually rewrite your resume and write a cover letter for each single role that you're applying to, you can use AI for that. And I'll share a link. I shared some information about how you can do that. But basically, you're taking the job description and you're taking the information about the company and then your resume, and you're saying, okay, customize and tailor my resume for this role, but do not hallucinate. So that's key. I mean, it's always been an issue if you put fake information on your resume. It's like, oh yeah, I know how to do this, or I managed a team, and you actually haven't managed a team. It's even more of an issue with AI because it will fabricate. I played with this and I had to really tune the prompt to get it to not add information that was literally not on my resume and to not fabricate details. Don't create fake roles, fake skills. Don't say I know how to do something if it's not present in my resume. I don't have that experience or haven't told you. And you can use this in a way that it could be a query kind of response thing where you say, ask me a series of these 10 kind of questions to get to the details of what you need to have a customized resume. And then do the same thing for the cover letter. So a cover letter, you could say, okay, customize this for this role, knowing my resume, knowing my LinkedIn, knowing this company. Write a cover letter that's going to be relevant for this and customize. So you can do that, and that can be done in seconds instead of spending 20 minutes, an hour doing this per job. Who has time for that? And you can now play the numbers game. And there are AI services for this that will give you a list of relevant jobs very quickly. Usually by the time it hits LinkedIn, it's too late. No one wants to hear that, but a lot of the job boards on LinkedIn, by the time it gets there, it's already been posted on the career page on the company's kind of website. And it already has 100 applications, or even there have been cases 15,000 people applied for one role. And if you're late, you're number 15,000 and 14,999 people have already applied for the job. You're not going to get an interview. So you can use these AI services, and I'll link some of that. I've talked about that too, to very quickly identify relevant roles and very quickly send a customized resume job application to the company. And it is important to move fast. The research has supported that too. So if you're in the first few job applications, you're much more likely to get selected for an interview or a pre-screen than if you're way late, right? It's just not going to happen. So it works, and it's better to have it move quickly than be perfect. Better. It's not the way it works, right? A job listing is a wish list. People think it's all the harsh requirements, and there may be a few in there, but it's kind of the wish list. So if they find somebody that's like 80% fit and worked at a good company, they're going to still talk to you, even if you're not 100% fit, right? And there's different levels of flexibility with that kind of stuff, right? So I think that's important, and you can use AI to prep for your interview too. So we also talked about that in the call. By the way, the community calls are free. So I post those with the Zoom link and all that stuff to the community on Discord. I also put it into Substack chat. I send it through email if you're a subscriber. And you can drop in and we talk about stuff that's relevant for kind of the current events in the industry and what's going on with the job search and interviews and you name it. But also specific questions. So people ask questions and say, hey, do you have advice for me? Here's what I'm dealing with. How do I manage this? And it's not always about job search. It can be a issue you're having with your manager or with a coworker, whatever it might be, right? So it's not always about just searching for a job. But we talked about that where you can use AI to prep to say, okay, taking a look at my LinkedIn, my resume, all my experience, because not everything on your resume reflects everything you've done in terms of work and what you're capable of doing. And so you can say, looking at that role, looking at who I am, my skills, my knowledge, my experience, all that kind of stuff. Where are the gaps? Where am I falling short? Where will be the issues that they'll have with me if they see me? And you can either find a way to close those gaps, so to acquire that knowledge or to gain those skills, and people do. There's some people working right now on building agentic stuff that they can then put into a portfolio and they can have on GitHub to say, yeah, I'm familiar with AI. See, here's a project I built. Or you're going to have to verbally address it in the interview. They're going to say, hey, we were looking for somebody with 9 years of experience and you've only got 7. Why do you think that you're still a good fit for this role? So it'll help you see those gaps and prepare. They do have, it's kind of sad, they do have video AI agents that will interview you. Those things look pretty pathetic, by the way. People punk them and do all kinds of funny things and post those videos. You've probably seen those on TikTok or Instagram or even YouTube. But yeah, you can interview with an AI and practice, but it's not exactly like interviewing with a human. So I am happy to do that. So I am not really taking on new clients for the job search anymore, for a lot of reasons. I've been doing it for 10 years and things have changed. I think there's a lot of stuff you can do yourself through AI now, so you don't need me for that. But this piece is really helpful with somebody who's been in the industry a long time on both sides of the table. Obviously, I've interviewed for lots and lots and lots of jobs, but I was also a manager. So I was a manager, a director, a vice president, CEO of my own startup. I've interviewed a ton of people. And so I know what these interviews are like. And some of that is very tech specific, but a lot of it's very general. So I've helped people in other industries that had nothing to do with tech prepare for their interviews and do a mock interview. So yeah, you can hire me for an hour and we can do a mock interview and get you ready. And I can push hard and tell you where you're doing well and where you need to work on things and get straight, honest feedback from somebody who's really just trying to help you. And I'll be more honest with you than maybe a loved one or a friend who doesn't want to hurt your feelings. It's like, I'm not going to try to hurt your feelings, but I'm going to be honest with you. And I'm going to be human. I'm going to ask you things that an AI probably wouldn't even think to ask, or to respond in a way that AIs don't know how to because they're not human. They don't know how to. So anyway, I can help with that. Go to newsletter.invinciblecareer.com. You can find tons of ways to get in touch with me, set up a free call, and we can talk about it. So yeah, use AI to do the numbers game. Apply to hundreds of jobs a week, have customized resume and cover letters in a few seconds. Play the game. And if you're getting callbacks and somebody wants to interview you, great. Sometimes it works, and I know some people where that's worked. But I still recommend using relationships for a few high value roles. So you should have probably 10 or less target companies, like your ideal employer, the ideal role, what would be a dream job for you. If you could get it, fantastic. And for those, you don't want to just do a spray and pray blast with something that's been built with AI, because you're going to turn them off. It's really not, that's not a numbers game. That's a relationship game. All of the jobs I had in my tech career were through relationships, always. Every single one. And I worked at places like IBM, Apple, eBay, Yahoo. Did a lot of consulting with other companies, and all relationships. So it is about smart networking. I don't believe in dumb cocktail party networking. I've talked so much about that. Tons of content if you go to newsletter.invinciblecareer.com around smart networking. I call it connecting with people that you've known before, and targeting specific people and trying to get closer to them, to have a conversation, to get introduced, and finding those inside champions. It's really about somebody inside the company that wants to help you get there. They really believe in you. They're going to put your resume in the hand of the hiring manager. They're going to help you prepare. They're going to tell you who is going to be on the interview team, what they care about, what their hot button items are, how to prepare for that. They want you to succeed. I've had that. It's pretty amazing. And so use that for probably your top 10 companies that you're really interested in, and work your network, build on those relationships. You could also, and you should be broadcasting. I talk about this as part of my strategy. There's kind of 3 pillars, right? And one of them is what I call broadcasting, but being highly visible online and relevant. People need to know you exist. They need to know how you think. They need to see you commenting on posts that can give you a lot of visibility. And people say, well, that's a smart question. That's a smart comment. There are people who are key in your industry that get a lot of attention online. We all have them. You know who they are. Engage with their content. Say something smart and relevant. I can tell you that recruiters harvest from that. I know that for a fact. The recruiters that worked for me would go through the top social media accounts of key people in the industry and look at the comments and look at who was commenting and say, that looks like somebody I should reach out to. There's another person. They're smart. I love their background. They said something intelligent. They weren't just trolling. They weren't just saying, me too, or that's a great idea. Don't do shallow, dumb crap like that. Don't do an AI generated comment. My God, I hate that crap. And now LinkedIn's adding a way to quickly say, this is AI slop. And so if you're using AI to generate comments, you're not winning the game. Don't do that. Be human. You're engaging with other humans. You're trying to get noticed. So that's important too. Broadcasting, be visible, look like you're highly relevant for what they're trying to hire. And then I talked about something on the call that I think the visual for me is almost like if you drop a pebble in a pond and you have these expanding ripples, right? The center of the pond for this impact of AI is the tech industry. And it is centered in places like Silicon Valley in California in the US. It's happening in China. There's some amazing AI stuff coming out of China. There are key places that are developing pretty impressive new services, love them or hate them, that is setting the tone for the rest of the industry and affecting the rest of the industry and other industries. And then there's a ripple effect. So even though it has the first impact in these core tech centers like Silicon Valley, it will continue to expand outward. The impact of AI is rippling outward into other industries. It is affecting manufacturing. It is affecting transportation, entertainment, education. But it's later. So you can move to these outward ripples and you'll probably find more opportunities and the ability to find a job than if you're competing for the hot middle. I can tell you the people who are applying for jobs at OpenAI and Anthropic and Google and Microsoft and Facebook, I guess Meta, good luck. There are thousands and thousands of people trying to get those AI jobs at those companies or other jobs. But if you go to an expanding ripple, there's less competition. I've talked about this so many times that there are other industries where you will have less competition, but you're still doing the kind of work you want to do. And they're good companies. So don't obviously go work for a lousy company, but find a good company. And then there's geo ripples. So yes, there's the heart of this stuff that's going on in California and Silicon Valley and in China. But there are other countries that impact hasn't been fully felt yet. I talk about the time I spent in Greece, for example, many years ago, and I was like, wow, they seem to be, not in an insulting way, but 2 to 3 years behind what was happening in Silicon Valley. They were just starting to really adopt things, and they were talking a lot about these technology changes that had started 2 years ago in Silicon Valley. So it takes a while for things to kind of ripple into other industries and other geographies, and that's an opportunity. Sometimes you can work remote, sometimes you can relo. I know people who literally have left America and gotten a cool job, a new opportunity in Canada, in Germany, in Italy. There are lots of places, and if you're younger and you have the ability to move, that's kind of exciting. I mean, God, I wish I'd done more of that. And then finally, this is really probably aimed at the older folks, so the Gen X and millennials, is to transition and take some baby steps out of this full-time world, which is no longer fun at some point. Fractional roles is a good way to do that. I just saw that somebody I met in Australia is going to do that. So they're going to be a fractional design leader. I had a fractional COO and a CPO on my podcast, and we talked about what that looks like for them. I have a lot of friends and old colleagues that are doing fractional work now. So fractional leadership, consulting, where you kind of set your hours and you can pick and choose who you work with, and it's exciting. It's good work. Consulting's good work. I'm a big believer in self-employment. That's why I created the Exit Blueprint. I talk about that a lot more on that podcast, my Solopreneur podcast and newsletter, more than I do here. But it lets you semi-retire early. I don't believe in full retirement, and I talked about that before. I'm not going to get into it. But semi-retirement's pretty sweet. I went into semi-retirement at age 50. So rather than waiting to my 60s or my 70s, God forbid, I am still extremely active in my 50s. Working out every day, hiking, jogging, traveling, going to see live music every week, spending a whole day to go on a date with my wife every week. Couldn't do that when I was an employee. I didn't have the time for that. I wasn't allowed to just take off a whole day and go on a date. But when you're semi-retired, you sure can. And I love it. I get to go visit my kids. We're actually going to take off and spend almost a month in Alaska. And we've done it before. We did that last year. We're going to do it again this year. So it's happening in a few days. So I'm going to spend about a month in Alaska hiking and backpacking and staying in cabins and having amazing food and just hanging out with the people I love most, my family, in a beautiful place. Alaska's gorgeous. So again, could not do that if I wasn't self-employed. I'm self-employed, so my boss is me, and my boss says, you know what, cool, go see your kids, have some fun. But yeah, I don't know how to hammer this home more. I know there's some people with these massive social media accounts and reach that are saying the same message, and maybe you'll encounter that and you'll believe it, but you do not want to wait to live the best years of your life and to have the adventures you want to have and say, oh, wow, now I can finally do those things I've always wanted to do. You're not going to feel as able to do that in your 70s and 80s. I'm sorry. I mean, I work out constantly. I seriously do. I exercise like 1 to 2 hours a day. We hike anywhere from 8 to 12 miles on the weekend. We do trail running. We eat healthy. We don't smoke. We take care of ourselves. And yet I know I am not going to be as capable in my 70s and 80s. I'm not going to feel like climbing up some path to get into this old castle in Scotland when I'm in my 80s. It's going to be a lot harder. So I'm telling you, I want to do it now. I want to do it while I still can. And you do too. You do too. The guy who was talking about this said most people wait until it's too late. They're like trying to make their retirement last, and they're trying to push it off, and they're like, okay, I want to have all my money saved up, and I'm going to retire at 70 and maximize what I can pull out and Social Security. And then they're like, okay, I'm free now, but I'm just not as capable anymore. I'm not going to go hiking in the Andes at this age. Anyway, I want you to enjoy life. I want you to enjoy the second half of your life. It's super important. I talk a lot about that in my other podcast, was the side questing life. So yeah, we just had an interesting live on Substack about that. Super important. Anyway, so that's my advice. I just want to share that with you, and you can check out newsletter.invinciblecareer.com for some of the links. But yeah, use AI to play the numbers game. Use your relationships to focus on the top 10 most important roles that you find exciting. Keep broadcasting so people know that you exist and that you're relevant for what they're looking for. Check out those expanding ripples, because it may be a different industry in geo that may be able to give you an opportunity. And then find a way to semi-retire early, folks, so you can enjoy the rest of your life. All right. With that, I'm going to start packing and get ready to head off to Alaska. Take care. Until next time, I wish you the best of luck in becoming an opportunity magnet for the best things in life.